The storm on the horizon. Imagine yourself as a young woman in a quiet village, nestled in the vast plains of Central Asia. It's the year 1220, and you're out there milling flour under a brilliant blue sky, the kind that stretches forever without a single cloud in sight. Then, a low rumble starts echoing across the land, like distant thunder, but there's no storm brewing above. The ground trembles, and as you squint toward the edge of the world, you spot it. A shadowy wave rolling in, swallowing the horizon. It's not a force of nature. It's an army of riders, countless horsemen charging as one relentless tide. In mere hours, your world, the laughter of children, the warmth of your home, the rhythm of daily life, will vanish into ashes and chaos. What follows isn't just survival, it's a descent into a nightmare you couldn't have dreamed up. The figure at the heart of this terror, Genghis Khan. To most of us, he's the ultimate conqueror, the brilliant tactician who forged nomadic clans into a juggernaut that carved out the biggest land empire ever seen, spanning from the Pacific to the heart of Europe. We picture him as a visionary leader, uniting fractious tribes and outsmarting empires with sheer cunning. Yet peel back the layers of myth, and you'll uncover a shadow side that's been whispered about in hushed tones by historians for centuries. This isn't the glorified tale of battles won and territories claimed. It's the grim underbelly, where conquest turned intimate and personal in the most horrifying ways. What I'm about to share draws from ancient Persian scribes, official Chinese annals, and digs that have unearthed bones telling silent stories. These sources paint a picture of how the Mongols didn't just wield swords and arrows, they turned human desire and reproduction into weapons sharper than any blade. This wasn't chaotic looting or the fog of war frenzy. It was a deliberate machine of domination, where sexual domination became a cornerstone of their strategy, more devastating than catapults or fire. These methods weren't slips by undisciplined troops. They were baked into the empire's playbook, fueling growth while etching deep wounds into societies that echo through time in DNA, traditions, and collective memory. For years, experts brushed this off as biased tales from defeated foes, exaggerated to demonize the victors. But the accounts stack up too neatly, from Islamic scholars jotting down eyewitness horrors, to Chinese bureaucrats logging imperial decrees, even European explorers scribbling notes in awe and revulsion. They all describe a honed system of terror that blended physical force with mind games, not merely taking land, but reshaping bloodlines. The Mongols didn't stop at victory. They engineered futures by controlling who bore children and how. Think of it as an early form of bio-warfare, harvesting people to build loyalty and legacy, something that would shock today's scientists. Let me be clear. This exploration isn't about smearing today's Mongolia or reveling in gore. It's about staring down raw history, even when it makes your stomach turn. The Mongols' tactics in this realm stand as one of the most organized instances of using assault and coerced procreation to break and rebuild nations. And it paid off so well that it influenced steppe warriors for generations, setting a brutal standard across the continent. The sheer magnitude of it all boggles the mind. Modern DNA research points to about 16 million guys walking around today, roughly 1 in 200 men globally, carrying genetic fingerprints straight from Genghis and his kin. That's no accident of casual flings. It's the footprint of a massive orchestrated campaign of inheritance through force. Their war engine ran like clockwork, but when it came to handling the vanquished, it showed a chilling precision that went beyond mere savagery. People, especially women and kids, weren't afterthoughts or prizes. They were assets, sorted, allocated, and exploited with a plan that rivals today's supply chains. As Mongol hordes neared a settlement, they'd dispatch messengers with a stark ultimatum: yield everything and we'd spare the basics. Fight back, and erasure awaits. But erasure meant more than slaughter. It was about dismantling lineages, blending peoples against their will, and spawning new generations tied to Mongol goals. Even before the gates cracked, their spies had mapped out the prizes, the loveliest faces, the healthiest families, the lines promising strong heirs. They kept tabs on which clans birthed the prettiest kids, which showed brains or brawn, and which groups held the raw potential to bolster the empire's future stock. This was no impulsive rampage fueled by adrenaline. It was strategic husbandry, viewing communities as herds to be culled and crossed. Long before genes were a science, the Mongols got the gist: master breeding, and you own tomorrow. When defenses crumbled, leaders divvied up the crowds by criteria like youth, allure, and worth. Fertile young women, tagged as prime material, handed out to fighters in a ranked order. The cream of the crop went to top brass, with the Khan claiming his share, but it deepened from there. Not just bondage, but a setup to crank out offspring at peak efficiency. They knew shock could hinder births, so they crafted setups to shatter spirits without ruining bodies. Women found themselves in controlled spaces that pushed conception while squashing revolt. It was all run with the crispness of a ledger book. Overseers noted assignments, monitored swells, and tracked kids' paths. They balanced pairings to avoid close-kin risks, tinkered with matches for traits like height or smarts, and treated it like fine-tuning a bloodline for war horses. Offspring from these unions had scripts written before their first cry. Those mirroring Mongol looks, often whisked into the fold, trained as one of them, climbing ranks in the army. Kids favoring their mother's side, maybe traded away, gifted in deals, or discarded if useless. The mind war part hit hardest. Rumors of approaching Mongols sparked mass exoduses, not from blades alone, but from dread of a living hell. Cities capitulated en masse, preferring chains to the alternative fate shadowing their women. Survivors navigated a world that shredded every tie, to kin, heritage, even self. No links back, constant watches during carrying, and dire lessons for defiance. The numbers stun. Scholars peg millions funneled through this mill over their explosive century. One Persian writer chronicled how whole urban populations of females vanished into the moor, ghosts to their loved ones. Ground truths from sites across old domains back it up. Graves with clustered remains bearing marks of routine abuse, starvation, hints from bonds, and DNA mixes from far-flung roots. The machinery of inheritance. Now, let's dive into the cold economics that oiled this grim engine. Captive beauties weren't mere trophies. They fetched fortunes in trade hubs, stretching from the steppes to distant bazaars. One striking young woman could outvalue a stable of steeds or tribute halls from subjugated lands. The Mongols spun a web where bodies fueled the coffers, bankrolling more raids and realms. But the real twist, they wove this horror into their ranks as motivation. Fighters got pledged shares of the finest catches for valor, turning atrocity into ambition. Top performers picked first, spurring fiercer charges for sweeter rewards. Distribution flowed like a well-oiled hierarchy. Generals skimmed the elite, then down the line based on deeds and status. It bonded the troops, making violation a badge of success. Far from shame, they paraded it in their tales, logging human hauls alongside gold and gear as conquest's due. In their eyes, it was the victor's sacred claim blessed by the skies. Backing it all was a bureaucracy that hummed with detail. Officials devised grids to rank captives by childbearing promise, looks, and utility. Ledgers followed ancestries, birth rates, and results with the sharpness of a rancher's notes. Fresh conquests coughed up lists, unwed girls, new mums, clans known for comely progeny. These fed into plans for strikes, projecting harvests like seasonal yields. The holding pens, feats of dark ingenuity, sprawling camps housing hordes, engineered for output over freedom. Docks on site tuned health, dosed fertility boosts, and oversaw deliveries. Sentries, often incapable of fathering, kept the lines pure. Prolific bearers or those yielding prized traits got perks, richer meals, softer beds, but always more cycles. Failures? Shunted to bargain bins or worse. Their grasp on traits was eerily forward-thinking. Tracking lineages for generations, they'd spot veins of towering builds, sharp minds, or stunning features, then engineer crosses to amplify them. Noble captives weren't wasted, paired with Mongol lines to birth blends of local clout and invader grit. These kids rose as overseers, warriors, envoys, homegrown elites bridging worlds, loyal to the core. Mongol archives spill the beans, memos assigning specifics to bosses, tallying conceptions, valuing programs like investments. Letters swapped tips on tastes, plotting grabs from choice spots. To sanctify it, priests spun yarns of heavenly mandates, the Khan's seed destined to blanket the globe, making submission a holy act. Defiance? Blasphemy, warranting hellish ends. Mind games were their secret sauce, honed on human frailty. Fresh arrivals endured swings of cruelty and kindness to erode wills without wrecking vessels. Parades of content ones dangled hope. Comply and ease follows. Kids became chains. Bond with yours through obedience, or lose them forever. Love twisted into leash, stronger than iron. Moving masses demanded genius logistics, wagon trains as rolling hubs, kitted for on-the-go management, docks, guards, clerks keeping pace with campaigns. This birthed breakthroughs in tracking, care, control, leaps ahead, but bent to evil. Turncoats greased the wheels. Locals aiding the hunt got shields from wrath, even promotions. Rebels? Targeted hits to snag their best and gut their futures. Trade veins pulsed beyond borders, with merchants from east to west dealing in lives like silk. Sexuality bankrolled wars, a grim GDP. Training for handlers mirrored boot camps. Youths drilled in sorting, running sites, squeezing max yields, key to climbing the ladder. Kids from this abyss? Shaped in a void where abuse was air, bonds were barters, worth dictated fates. No maternal whispers of old ways, just utility. The sharpest often echoed the cycle, refining it brutally, trauma rippling outward. Digs keep unearthing proof, mass pits with battered frames, captivity scars, DNA from distant merges. Medics weren't saviors, they were optimizers, forcing diets, herbs, fixes to pump fertility. Care was currency, keep the asset producing. Conditioning stripped souls, alone among strangers, tongues silenced in isolation, names wiped, replaced with tags of ownership, erasing self, faiths forbidden, swapped for step rights, starving spirits, hierarchies pitted captives, birth boys for bonuses, breeding rivalry. Motherhood? The ultimate trap, endure for glimpses of your blood, submission sealed by heartstrings. But hold on, what if I told you this system's echoes reach even further, twisting societies in ways we're still unraveling? Stay tuned for the depths yet to come. Picture this, a sprawling empire stretching from sea to sea, fueled not just by conquest but by a chilling system that turned human lives into a renewable resource. The Mongols didn't just raid for gold or glory, they harvested people, treating entire populations like fields to be sown and reaped. Their breeding programs weren't a sideshow, they were a cornerstone of imperial strategy, designed to reshape the world in their image. How did they pull it off on such a massive scale? It wasn't just brute force, it was a machine of precision blending logistics, psychology, and raw ambition into a system that churned through millions. Let's pull back the curtain on how they made it work, and why it left scars that time still hasn't healed. The logistics alone were a marvel of dark efficiency. Imagine caravans snaking across continents, not just hauling supplies, but carrying hundreds of women in mobile compounds built to keep the system humming. These weren't crude wagons. They were rolling prisons equipped with medical setups, guards, and scribes who tracked every detail. Names, pregnancies, outcomes, like accountants balancing a ledger. The Mongols had cracked the code on moving human cargo over thousands of miles, maintaining their productivity even during grueling campaigns. They invented systems of record-keeping so sharp that modern bureaucracies would take centuries to catch up, all to ensure their grim harvest never slowed. Local collaborators were the grease in this machine. Conquered communities faced a brutal choice: aid the Mongols or watch their own be targeted relentlessly. Those who played ball got perks: protection from raids, better rations, even a shot at climbing the imperial ranks. Some became scouts, pinpointing fertile women or families with prized traits for the next sweep. Others managed the intake, sorting captives like livestock at market. But defiance, it triggered surgical strikes aimed at ripping out a community's reproductive core, ensuring no future resistance could take root. This wasn't just conquest, it was demographic warfare, calculated to break a people's will to fight on. The trade networks that sprouted from this system, were as vast as the empire itself. From Chinese port cities to Middle Eastern markets, human lives became currency, traded alongside silk and spices. A single prized captive could fetch more than a war chest of silver, fueling the Mongol war machine with every transaction. This wasn't a black market sideline. It was a global economy of flesh, with merchants from distant lands cashing in on the Mongol appetite for bodies. The wealth generated didn't just buy weapons, it funded the next wave of invasions, creating a self-sustaining cycle of conquest and exploitation. Training for those running this horror show was rigorous, almost academic. Young Mongol officials were schooled in the art of human management, how to classify captives, optimize breeding sites, and maximize output. These weren't random skills. They were prerequisites for rising in the ranks, as vital as mastering archery or siege tactics. Manuals detailed how to assess a woman's value, monitor her health, and ensure compliance without breaking her utility. It was a perverse science, blending observation, experimentation, and ruthless pragmatism, all to keep the empire's human engine purring. The children born into this system faced a world stripped of normalcy. Raised in camps where violence was routine and relationships transactional, they grew up knowing only the Mongol way or nothing at all. Many never heard their mother's true name or learned a whisper of her culture. Their worth was measured by appearance and potential. Those with Mongol traits might climb the ranks, trained as soldiers or scribes, while others, marked by their mother's features, were often sold off or discarded. The most tragic were those deemed useless, cast aside like defective goods. These kids, shaped by a machine that saw them as tools, often became its fiercest enforcers, perpetuating the cycle with chilling efficiency. Archaeological finds keep dragging this nightmare into the light. Across former Mongol lands, mass graves reveal clusters of women and children, their bones etched with signs of captivity, fractures from restraint, teeth worn by poor diets, DNA showing forced unions across vast distances. These aren't isolated tragedies. They're snapshots of a system that processed people by the millions. The physical evidence matches the written record. Persian chroniclers, Chinese officials, and European travelers all noted the same grim patterns, describing cities stripped of their women, families erased, and bloodlines rewritten. The medical side of this operation was its own kind of horror. Mongol physicians weren't there to heal, they were there to optimize. They developed techniques to boost fertility, forced diets packed with calorie-dense foods, herbal concoctions to regulate cycles, even crude surgeries to fix reproductive issues. Compassion wasn't the goal. A fertile woman was a valuable asset, and any care she got was about keeping her productive. Injuries from assault or childbirth. Patched up not for her sake, but to preserve her output. These medics were engineers of flesh, treating humans like livestock whose sole purpose was to breed. What's most haunting is how this system didn't just destroy lives, it reshaped entire societies. The Mongols weren't content with victory, they wanted to rewrite the future. By blending their bloodlines with those of the conquered, they created hybrid generations loyal to the empire, not their ancestral roots. Princes and nobles weren't just killed, they were forced into pairings that produced children who could govern or negotiate on Mongol terms, blending local legitimacy with invader grit. It was genetic statecraft, ensuring the empire's grip lasted long after the hooves stopped thundering. The echoes of control now. Let's zoom in on the mind games. The psychological warfare that made this system so devastatingly effective. The Mongols didn't just chain bodies, they shackled souls, using techniques so cunning they'd make modern interrogators take notes. When a woman was taken, her first days were a calculated assault on her identity. Stripped from her kin, surrounded by strangers speaking an alien tongue, she was plunged into isolation so deep it crushed her ability to resist. Language barriers weren't accidental. They were a weapon, cutting her off from any chance of connection or rebellion. Within weeks, her world shrank to the walls around her, her thoughts trapped in a language she couldn't share. Then came the erasure of self. Her name, her link to family, to history, was forbidden, replaced with a Mongol tag marking her as property. This wasn't just bureaucracy, it was psychological demolition, stripping away the anchor of who she was. Without a name, she became a number, a line in a ledger, her past reduced to ash. Religion, too, was weaponized. Forced to abandon her faith for Mongol rituals, she lost the spiritual strength that might have sustained her. The empire knew that a broken spirit was easier to control than a chained body, and they mastered the art of breaking both. The breeding camps were laboratories of manipulation. Women were pitted against each other in a cruel hierarchy. Bear a son, and you might eat better, sleep softer, gain a sliver of privilege. It turned captives into competitors, desperate to prove their worth through the very act that enslaved them. The most gut-wrenching tactic, using motherhood as a leash. A woman who bore a child was tied to it by love, forced to comply to keep her baby close or alive. The Mongols knew a mother would endure anything for her child, and they twisted that bond into a tool sharper than any whip. Children born in this system were pawns from their first breath. Those with Mongol features might be torn from their mothers, raised as loyalists with no tie to their heritage. Others marked by their mother's traits faced sale or slaughter, their value tied to market demand or strategic need. Some were groomed as go-betweens, using their dual heritage to bridge conquered worlds while serving Mongol ends. The empire didn't just breed bodies, it bred tools, shaping generations to fit its mold. The ripple effects of this system stretched far beyond the camps. Entire cultures were fractured, their histories rewritten through forced unions and stolen lineages. The Mongols created a world where fear of their approach emptied cities before a single arrow flew. That terror wasn't just about death. It was about the living nightmare of losing your identity, your family, your future to a machine that saw you as stock. Societies crumbled under that weight, some never recovering their sense of self. The legacy lingers in ways we're still untangling. Those 16 million men carrying Genghis's DNA. They're a testament to a system that didn't just conquer, it colonized the very essence of humanity. Archaeological digs, genetic studies, and ancient texts all confirm the scale. A deliberate, industrial approach to reshaping populations, leaving marks that endure in blood and bone. This wasn't random cruelty, it was a blueprint for domination, one that influenced empires long after the Mongols faded. So, what's the takeaway from this descent into history's shadows? It's a reminder that power, unchecked, can twist even the most human parts of us, love, family, identity, into tools of control. The Mongol story isn't just about a distant past, it's a warning about what happens when ambition outstrips humanity. Want to dive deeper into the echoes of empires or share your thoughts on this? Hit that subscribe button, tap the bell, and let's keep exploring the truths that shape our world.